along to the Metaverse Insider's interview series. My name is Josh, and in today's episode, we speak to a Senior VP of Innovation at LG Electronics, Dr. Sokwoo Rhee. He leads the North American Innovation Center in Silicon Valley, LG Nova, and is responsible for developing new businesses or partnering with existing ones in domains that promise future growth. The metaverse presents a promising platform for innovation, and LG Electronics' interest in this domain is a testament to the company's recognition of its potential. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Rhee. To start off, could you please provide us with a brief introduction to yourself and what it is that you do at LG Electronics, please?
So I am a Senior VP of Innovation at LG Electronics, and I run a innovation center in Silicon Valley called LG Nova. Okay, so that's a North American Innovation Center. And we are tasked to create new businesses for the future. So LG Electronics, $70 billion appliance and TV company. We do a lot of manufacturing, but that's not only things that we like to do in the future. Okay, so we want to get into more future growth areas like healthcare, metaverse, and also clean tech, for example. And our mission of the center is to create those businesses or businesses in those areas.
That's very exciting. Sounds like you're the heart of innovation at LG then.
Oh, absolutely. That's why I'm so excited. But at the same time, that's why my job is really difficult.
Absolutely. It's very difficult to determine what's to come, but here we are doing so anyway.
Yeah, well, it's not just projecting what's to come; it's creating what's to come. So that's actually actually two different things. One is, okay, look at the landscape and see what's coming. That's first thing. But the second thing is, in many cases, you can actually create the future. That's for me, it's a preferred path because I know where I want to go instead of I just need to forecast or foretell what's going to come in the future.
Exactly, placing down the stepping stones for the future, as some may say. So, regarding the metaverse and innovation in that respect, could you please define briefly what you believe it to be and how you are strategically positioning LG for its future?
So let's first talk about the innovation as a big picture. Okay, and then I can talk a little bit about metaverse since this is a metaverse related discussion. So innovation for me, obviously, is creating something new that is useful and that is meaningful for the world and for the people in the world. That can mean a lot of different things. Useful and meaningful can mean economic benefits, or it could mean more of the impact on the everyday life. And sometimes it could mean bigger missions like saving the earth, for example. So anything that falls into that category, I consider them as innovation. Now, from an LG Electronic perspective, we are a company, we are a corporation. So we specifically focus on the innovation that can create economic benefits for the company and also for the people. So when I say talk about it, so okay, what kind of new businesses we can create that did not exist before. So that is the innovation that we do in LG Electronics. Now, we focus a lot on the business side of the innovation. What I mean by that is I'm not talking about operational innovation, or I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, say, okay, there are a lot of technological innovation in the lab. They make something new, interesting, all good. But at the end of the day, if you do not create a massive scale business based on the technology, usually it becomes like technologies for technology's sake. Okay, so that's really not what we do. We are really trying to identify and create meaningful business based on those innovations. So now about the metaverse side. So this is actually an interesting question. So should we talk about metaverse now, or do you have more questions before I jump onto that?
Absolutely, that works perfectly for me.
Okay, so metaverse is a buzzword, as we all know, and a lot of folks are talking about the glasses, AR, VR, and contents that goes onto that, and so on. Um, So a lot of the innovations have happened or is happening on the device side. How to make it lighter, how to make it more comfortable, uh, how to make it comfortable to wear for, let's say, more than half an hour. Okay, so that is really the core theme on the innovation side on the hardware these days. What we are looking at in LG Nova is a little different. So this is I need to explain this a little bit. So LG is a huge hardware manufacturer. We do great work in manufacturing hardware. So there are teams that focus on hardware innovation on AR, VR. Okay, so there are teams doing that. But LG Nova, because our mission of looking at more of a futuristic and growth area, so we are looking more on the services and platforms and software side of the metaverse. Okay, so the way that I look at, so when I say we, it's actually I, is LG is there will be devices out there. It may take time, but there will be devices out there. Really, the value that comes to those devices will not going to be just the devices. It will be the value that can bring to everyday life in terms of a service. So the market for devices will not going to be led by the hardware. We're going to be led by, okay, what is the service that's going to go on top of it? So I think that's what's lacking right now. So everybody is so much like interested in devices, but do they have a actual tangible service that people may want to pay for it? Okay, so that really comes down to that. So we are really looking at more on the vertical markets in terms from the when you look at the metaverse. So we don't just call it metaverse. We say is it industrial training application, or is it more of a conference and office application, or is this more, say, more of a like gaming application? So we look at it from more of a verticals application perspective, not necessarily the horizontal perspective. At least that's what we do at LG Nova. So at this point, what we focus on is actually very tangible industrial training application. So there's a huge training market. So if you are a company, corporation that either manufactures anything, when you have a new employee or technician, you got to train them. The best way to do that is bring them to the factory and let them play with these components and all that. Very expensive. Think about it. You have to bring someone to the factory and actually play with the real thing. It should happen, but it doesn't need to be from day one. So the idea is to use more of a metaverse or virtual world to train them to some extent, to a certain level, before we actually bring them to the actual factory and train them. So it is one of the applications we're pursuing. Sorry, I talk too much. I'm going to stop here.
That's absolutely fine. It's very interesting to see you take this vertical route. Many approach the metaverse from a pure entertainment perspective, not necessarily taking industrial initiatives into account, which many would argue is a much larger aspect of the metaverse. So, within these different sectors, are there any which you find to be of greater interest or that hold greater promise in this emerging space?
Well, the gaming market is probably largest as of right now. So that is the market for now. But at the same time, there are a lot of players in that already. So as an LG, we really need to look at, okay, what is the next market than what is market today? Um, I think there will be a lot of applications in industry, and I think a lot of companies are beginning to realize that. So when they start selling, let's say, $3,000, $2,000 headset, it's going to be hard for consumers to buy them in volume. So I think the initial target market could be more of an industrial market or developers. So I think the metaverse landscape is going there, and which I completely agree. So that's where I think the initial, beyond the games, I think there's going to be initial market. So industrial market is pretty big. When I say industry, it's still pretty big. I think so. That's why we have to start from somewhere. Industry big, so we have to start from somewhere, and we chose, as I said, industrial training or factory training or in some sense, is related to job reskilling. Okay, it's not just a training because let's say you have someone whose job was not the working on this kind of manufacturing or this kind of environment, but then we can retrain them to get into new jobs and get into a new job requirement. So I think that's what how we categorize it.
That's fascinating. Well, as you know, with the onset of both new software and hardware, skills will change and the need for different skills will grow. It's very interesting to see how you are integrating industrial training into the vast umbrella of different metaverse experiences.
And I think that's the key experience. We all want to have a great experience, and no matter what you do, the customer experience is the key, even in the industry market. But at the end of the day, okay, what is the usefulness of the experience? And at the end of the day, is there any real value that brings to the table to the users? And yeah, one way to the value is realized that you have fun playing a game for half an hour. That's good. You spend a nice time. The other one is you spend an hour in this metaverse to get your skill sets improved or retrained. That's a real value.
Yes, for sure. There is a lot of value in that. Yet it's very understated. I feel that the immersive technologies like VR and AR have a lot of hype and funding pumped into it. However, I find that the ecosystem or the background to properly support it just isn't there yet. So, in its current state, I wouldn't say consumers can properly enjoy it and experience it for what it should be.
In many innovations is natural. You start with hardware because that's something you can touch and feel. And then once you have start this hardware ecosystem, at least to some extent built, then suddenly new applications start popping up. And it's not unnatural. Okay, so like PC, for example, when there was a maybe Steve Jobs created Apple computer, I don't think he envisions that, oh, we're going to have a Facebook or we're going to have like Google on top of it, right? So that's what happens. But at the same time, without having, it's a cliche, but a killer app like email, for example, or spreadsheet, for it's very hard to have this new modality to be distributed and spread broadly, and that's hard. Sometimes you don't plan for it. These things just pop up from out of nowhere, but you have to put effort to search and discover those new services, and it's a high risk and but high reward type of work, and that's what we LG Nova does.
Absolutely. Well, just to elaborate slightly on that, I understand that the metaverse may be a daunting concept to many. So, when you come to having these new products or new courses to increase accessibility in this new world, are there struggles in marketing this to the average person so they can understand it and truly know how that works, not to scare them away? Because I know people still struggle with, current Web 2 applications, yet alone Web 3 and Metaverse application.
That is actually a very good question. So as I said, usability or access. So familiarity with any new technologies is extremely important for users, for user adoption. So for metaverse, I think the biggest barrier at this point is, honestly speaking, the glasses. So I obviously have tried multiple different glasses myself, VR glasses and so on. But when you have it, essentially the idea is that you're going to be immersed into new world. But in many people, I'll say probably most people are going to feel like you are being blocked from real world. Okay, and instead of saying you are immersed into, if you're playing, if you're a gamer, it's perfect because you know you are immersed into new world anyway. But if you're talking about other types of applications, you are trying to replace the real reality with the virtual reality. Now that is a foreign concept for many people, and that's also different than looking at TV screen or a PC screen. PC screen, you know that you are in real world, and you have just a small window that you can see the virtual world, like we are doing right now. it is a very different experience from users' perspective. And you are right; it's hard for users to get used to the concept of, say, essentially you are in some sense uh, blinded from real world in a sense, and then replaced that real world is replaced with virtual world. It's going to take a while, I think, for everyone to get to that point. It's happening. More and more people are getting used to it, thanks to mostly because of the gaming applications. But I think it will take a while.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I definitely think that gaming application has been one of the largest drivers for its adoption up to this point in time. But I also have begun to see it come up in other industries, especially architecture and engineering. It's very fascinating in that respect because it's not a gimmick or a game at that point, you know. And I don't think the sense of motion sickness is as great in that caliber, just because, you know, you see things, you visualize things in a way which is still real. It's still your reality, just with overlays, just foundations of what AR will be eventually. So I find that very, very interesting. Well, as you were saying, it's tricky to get to grips with VR. It's just a foreign concept to many.
But at the same time, now I talked about all the issues or difficulties I'm facing. So let's talk about a little bit more about why I'm optimistic about it. Physical world, at the end of the day, uh, we are limited by the physical world in some sense. So we want to do a lot more than what we can do in this our existing 3D dimension physical world. So it's a human intuition. I always follow that if you want to create a new product or innovation, you have to follow trajectory of what human we're gonna feel about, whether it's a convenient or is just adding. When you say value, it's a fancy word. It's really about whether people are lazy. Okay, so they want to have a more convenience. People want to pay less because that's more. So something that is aligned with the human intuition, and sometimes it's just a natural thought process. So I think at some point everyone wants to go beyond our existing real world, 3D that we are confined to. Now, it's not going to change overnight because it's just additional service to existing world. But I think it will happen, and that's a long term view. And say, okay, that's why industrial training, or as you said, architecture, or even like you saw the things in like Minority Report that you see that bring moving things around, even that level of the controls. I think when I say control, I'm talking about this controlling the things with your hand, and all those things will at some point going to be almost like natural. And then when that happens, I think it's going to be a lot more. It's going to be a lot more familiar. Metaverse will be a lot become more familiar to everybody.
Exactly. Takes us straight back to the point of familiarity, you know? As soon as people are comfortable with the matter, or it doesn't seem like strange or alien to them, then it becomes natural and becomes second nature, which is exactly the trajectory in which we want this to go in.
I think it will happen. So now the question is, where do we start? Now, that's why LG Nova is picking a fight. Well, not in a bad sense. Picking a application. I shouldn't have said fight. Picking an application that it may not be probably the world domination at first, okay? But we start with something that we really think there's a real value in application, and human experience can at least stand or deal with the level of the inconvenience, for lack of better words, but still get value, more value that they get out of it than the feeling of inconvenience. Like again, industrial training. I mean, if you don't train, you gotta train, because if you want to get into a new world, new job, or new skill set. So I think if there's any real value they can get out of it, I think they will start jumping on it, and hopefully that experience is going to multiply, and at some point, everybody going to feel more comfortable and familiar with it.
Oh, absolutely. It's just breaking into that mainstream media so people truly understand what it is. And also, over time, experience will gather, and therefore, as we were saying, there'll be greater ease of access. So, wrap for part one of our conversation with Dr. Rhee from LG Nova. Be sure to stay tuned for part 2 of this interview and for weekly updates in the industry and content covering all things Metaverse. Follow the Metaverse Insider on Twitter and LinkedIn and visit metaverseinsider.tech for all our content. Thank you for joining us, and until next time.